Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of the Break-Thru Active podcast. As always, I'm here with Mitch. How are you, mate?
Good afternoon, mate. I'm doing pretty well. Rainy Friday out here in Newcastle, so inside staying dry.
Absolutely.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm looking forward to the weekend. Now, sleep, really, really important. I feel as though the longer that we've been in the industry as the years pass, sleep is becoming more and more important, shown in the research. And if we wind back 10 years, sleep is the cousin of death. Sleep when you're dead. I use every hour of the day. Successful people never sleep. That just is, and that's not true. And more importantly, it can be really, really bad for your health.
Yeah, I think that whole school of thought's definitely a bit outdated. Like you mentioned, there has been a lot more research here in the last decade or so that shows how important sleep is. And not only is it encouraged to get enough sleep, but to get as much sleep as possible, especially for people who are looking to perform at a high level. Whereas in the past, like you mentioned, if you were sleeping, it was, time wasted that you could be spent practicing or working out or, doing work or whatever it may be. And now it's really the complete opposite, where you do need to have as much sleep as you can to make sure you can perform at an optimal level. So definitely a bit of a shift in the way that people think about it.
Yeah, and I think it's our generation compared to the generation before us, and even before them. It was work 12 hours a day, sleep as little as possible, get up and go again. And the idea of working from home and having more time to yourself, the idea of working smart as opposed to working hard was not embraced by the last generation. It was hard work, and that's it.
Yeah, I think there has been a lot more time and energy spent towards having a good work-life balance as well. In times gone by and in previous generations, that term probably wasn't even coined at that point, where, now obviously any workplace and anyone who does have a job and has a profession, they know how important having that work-life balance is. Work obviously combined with life, which is family, friends, relationships, health, fitness, sport, activity, all that sort of stuff. There's definitely more of a trend towards that, which is definitely a positive.
Okay, so there's a study done in 2015. I have some facts for you. We've discussed these previously, but I thought we'd discuss them on the podcast.
Lay them on me. I don't even know these facts yet.
This is a statistic that made me realize just how important sleep was. So they put two groups of people in a calorie deficit. They weighed exactly the same. They were all male. They controlled as many variables as possible. They all exercised exactly the same. So what they did is one group slept for 8.5 hours per night. The other group slept for 5.5 hours. Now, over the 6 weeks, they both lost 4 to 5 kilos. They did a DEXA scan, and what they found was that the people that were sleep deprived, they lost 55% more muscle. So for example, if those same people over a long period of time lost 10 kilos, the people that got less sleep lost 5.5 kilos of muscle, when the people that were sleeping well lost no muscle. It was just all body fat.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously in terms of body composition and muscle mass and everything, there's no question with how important it is. And I think what we'll talk about here a little more is ways to improve sleep. That was, a little more what we have spoke about with our members. I think it is fairly well accepted now, like we mentioned earlier, that we all do need to get enough sleep, and for most of us, we do need to get some more sleep. And then the next question after that is, how do we improve our sleep? Improving our sleeping habits. How do we get more good quality sleep? And that can be something we can delve into today and give a few real life examples for people who are having some challenges with it, and also some things that people can implement, from tonight, that is going to help them get more sleep and more better quality sleep too.
Awesome. I've got some more facts for you.
Oh, okay.
So there was a study done in the NBA. Same study, sleep deprived versus the appropriate amount of sleep. Basketballers improved their shuttle run, so the length of the court, by 1.1 seconds. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but that is the difference between Usain Bolt being the fastest man in the world and an NRL player. For 1 second. Another stat.
Usain must have had a good night's sleep before before his 9 seconds 58
Absolutely.
the Olympics a few years ago.
One of our friends, Michael, he's a massive tennis fan who liked this stat. The same study was done with elite tennis players. Tennis players that got the appropriate amount of sleep improved their first serve accuracy by 14.3% within 1 week. It's incredible stuff. Incredible stuff.
Well, while you're talking about tennis, I have heard that Roger Federer, whenever he's traveling for a tournament and his family travel with him, he actually will rent 2 houses, one for his family and one for him to sleep in as well. He gets 12 hours sleep every night. Obviously, he can't expect his family to get 12 hours as well. So when it's bedtime for Roger, he just goes off to his own house and calls at night, 6 p.m. and wakes up at 6 a.m.
Yeah, LeBron gets 10.5 hours. That's his standard. And it's just...
So obviously we don't have too many LeBron Jameses or Roger Federers in our program here. So let's talk a little bit about what is some of the ways that people can improve their sleep if they were wanting to make some change. Maybe they have a Fitbit, maybe they have a Garmin or something that does track their sleep and they're not getting enough of it. What are some of the things that they can do to help improve that?
What the study found, there was 3 really important things. And there's obviously more than that, but the 3 main ones was light exposure early in the day. So just getting as much sun as possible during the day does wonders for your circadian rhythm and can help the production of melatonin. And they're 2 things that will help you fall asleep. Think about your big, long day at the beach. You spend a few hours in the sun. You've been laying down all day and you get home from the beach and you're wiped.
Yeah, zonked.
Right.
I know that feeling.
So vitamin D is crucial for the quality of sleep. Other one was trying to be as consistent as possible with your bedtime. I know for shift workers, that's almost impossible. And I know people that have kids, it's obviously very difficult. This is for people that can control it, right? If you can go to bed the same time and wake up the same time, once again, it's really, really important. So I feel like I'm in a pretty good routine now. And by 8:15, I am an absolute zombie. I'm walking around the house. I'm half asleep. I'm yawning. And all I want to do is sleep. And if I miss that bedtime at about like 8:15, 8:39, I actually struggle to fall asleep after that.
Yeah, well, I think that humans are such creatures of habit that we want to be doing the same things at the same time each day. And like you said, there are, plenty of people who work shift work and have young children and everything, which makes these things extremely challenging, if not impossible. But for the rest of us, and even within reason, those people, going to bed at a similar time, at least when you're able to, makes such a huge difference. Your body gets to that point and it gives you signs, it yawns, it starts to, you start to feel tired, you start to fall asleep. It's a telltale sign that you want to go to bed. So instead of trying to resist the urge and stay up later, I think that's always an important thing to remember, that your body is smart enough to tell you when it should be going to bed.
Yeah, and all this stuff is common sense, but we want to drive home today just the importance of sleep. Like one of our good friends, Elliot, we both love him to death. He's had 2 kids recently. One of his kids is can I say nightmare? I can say nightmare. He's not listening. Anyway, the point is the child's going to a sleep clinic and he hasn't got much sleep the last few years, and you can tell. You can actually tell, like, he's aged over the last few years. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, we're not talking about Elliot all of a sudden, but it definitely catches up to you as you get older. You look at people who, I think we all know someone who might be in their 40s and they look like they're 60.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time they are those people that have very stressful jobs and they work long hours and they haven't prioritized their health and, more importantly, in this case, their sleep. And it does take its toll over the years. And in the other end, you have people who may be, 60 years old and they look like they're only 50 and they have lived a much more relaxed life and gotten a lot of sleep and been just a whole, lot more relaxed and chilled out in the way that, they do carry on with their day to day. But there's no doubt that if you are deficient in sleep, it will start to age you over time.
Yeah. And in terms of our needs as human beings, we need food, water, shelter, and then sleep. Like it is that important, and it is not something that we should be sacrificing without understanding the possible ramifications it has to our health.
So another way that someone can improve sleep? I think you mentioned there was three main ones.
Yeah, so it was light exposure at the start of the day. It was waking at the same time, going to bed at the same time. And the last one was around food and water. So we shouldn't really be having a large meal right before bed, because that large meal is going to tell our body that we need to start digesting food. Our body temperature rises, which inhibits our ability to fall asleep. And I've done that before too, where I've been on the lounge watching Netflix, I pig out, have a bunch of chocolate, I go to bed as this big, sweaty mess, and I cannot fall asleep. So, and I'm sure you've done that too, like after the pizza, right? So we want to try and avoid having large unhealthy meals right before bed that are going to cause stress on our digestion system and basically give our bodies the opposite signals. So instead of slowing down and going to sleep, our body starts revving up again.
Yeah, and as it pertains to fluid or water or drinks, if this is the most common, almost obvious one, if you're drinking, a few cups of tea or a big drink of water before you go to bed, there's a very good likelihood that you are going to wake up through the night and have to go to the toilet, and that's just an unnecessary thing that you could normally avoid if you were to be drinking earlier on in the night or in the evening. So that's something I think for myself I have found has affected my sleep for sure. If I get home from running sessions late after 7 o'clock and I'm trying to be in bed by 8:30 or so, if I'm having a huge meal at 8 o'clock, it just doesn't work. So I've started trying to have some of my bigger meals earlier on in the day, and then trying to eat, I'm still eating dinner, trying to eat dinner as soon as I get home. So at least then I am getting 90 minutes, maybe even 2 hours before my last meal when I'm trying to go to sleep. And then also with the amount of fluid I'm having, I try to limit how much I have later in the evening. I'll have a glass of water with dinner, and that'll be about it, because I find that it just disrupts and interrupts my sleep so much if I am having that too close to sleep time.
Well, so they're the four main ones. We've got waking. I believe, my personal opinion, is it's really important that you go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. Secondly, it would be exposure to the sun, to vitamin D. The first thing they supplement in a retirement home, before they even look at the person and what conditions they have, they all supplement them with vitamin D. It is so important. Thirdly, that was digestion and food around bedtimes. And fourthly, as you mentioned, which is water intake or just fluid intake before bed. So they are the four big contributors to whether you're going to get a good night's sleep or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some other measures that people can take, and they're more, I guess you'd call them hacks or tips to improve sleep.
They're the one percenters.
Yeah, exactly. And there are things like making sure that, you don't have any light in your room at night time. So you don't want to be having flashing alarm clocks or have your phone, on, faced up, and every time you get a notification, it's bright, or having your your blinds open so there's a street light coming in. There are things like that can interrupt it. So I think.
So before you go ahead, the science behind that is if we see light before bed, our caveman bodies through evolution think it's almost daytime. It stops the production of melatonin, which can literally bring us out of that circadian rhythm that we are starting to fall asleep. So yeah, definitely try and avoid light exposure before bed.
Yeah, and I'm talking about more even while you're in bed in your room. But I think screen time.
Yeah, looking at your phone right before bed's horrible.
That's what I'm about to say here now. I think that is a huge thing that people can improve on, and I'm guilty of this, as I'm sure you are as well. Where if you're going to bed at 8:30, you're on your phone till 8:29, and before that you've been watching TV for an hour and a half, and you're trying to get from that point to going to sleep, and there's been lots of research done to show that interrupts your sleep and makes it harder to not only fall asleep but to stay asleep and get good quality sleep. So it's a work in progress for me, but I really try to limit my screen time for an hour leading up to bed. I do have a cheap set of blue blocker glasses that I wear. I don't know how much difference it makes, but I do have a pair of those that I wear. And I think all of us having a little less time on the phone, on the iPad, is probably a good thing anyway, sleep aside, spending more time with your partner or your kids or whatever is always a good thing. So I think as an actionable, like as in something that people can work on from tonight, I think that's probably one of the biggest things.
Yeah, and once again, you're on your phone. The last thing you see before bed is a news article about coronavirus cases are up, or this person died. It's just, it can stress you out. And the last thing that you want before bed is to see something stressful or something that's not going to help you wind down.
Yeah, and I've even seen research so that reading, a book, but reading fiction books is really beneficial before bed because it's something that is lighthearted. You're thinking about a make believe story. You're not thinking about something really awful like the coronavirus or about terrorism or something bad where your mind's ticking over through the night. So I think, like you mentioned, these aren't drastic measures that you can take, but they all contribute to poorer sleep.
Another
But
one.
I really believe that the screen time one is something that everyone can improve on.
Yeah. Now another 1%er. Actually, it's probably more of a 1%er. It's probably a 10%er. It's just the room temperature, right? We all know that it's harder to fall asleep in summer due to it being hot, and that is the same, I guess, principle that eating has before bed. When you go to sleep, you're trying to lower your core body temperature. Anything that keeps it higher is going to impede your ability to fall asleep. Studies have shown that the optimal room temperature is 18 degrees Celsius. You think about when you go to a hotel and it's blackout curtains, the aircon's on, and it's actually set to 18, which is why typically you have an amazing night's sleep in a hotel. So if you can control it, if you have an aircon in your room, if you're not scared of the electricity bill, like my parents, I invite you to turn it on and get into a deep slumber.
Yeah, no, and that's where in the summertime and in those hot nights, I've got a hot house at the best of times, and you do find it a lot harder falling asleep, but you find yourself waking up a whole lot more through the night. And I think having that optimal temperature makes a huge difference. But one thing I think we should address before we finish up here is how much sleep we should be getting. And obviously, there is an open-ended question there, and as much as you can get is a lot of the time optimal. 8 hours a night is something that gets thrown around a lot. But what people don't realize, I think, if they go to bed at 10 and wake up at 6, they haven't had 8 hours sleep. There is a lot of time in that period that they are awake, either getting to sleep or waking up through the night. And that number has been proven to be more like the 6.75 hours and 7 hours. But I think where that 8 hours has come from is being 8 hours in bed. Now, when the old verbiage of 8 hours a night sleep came around years ago, no one had Fitbits or Garmins or watches that could track this. So anyone who does track their sleep would know that a lot of the time they are in bed, they are awake. So if you're able to get about 7 hours of sleep a night, you're doing pretty well. But then also the quality of sleep you're getting is important too. So most of those sleep devices will show your REM sleep as well as your deep sleep. And if those two can factor in to be about 50% of your total sleep, you're in good stead. So if you're getting 7 hours of sleep in a night, you've got 2 hours of REM sleep, 1.5 hours of deep sleep, that equals 3.5 hours. That is half of your total sleep. And that's a pretty good position for you to be in if you are doing it consistently.
Yeah, and the most important thing is the amount of time that you spend in bed, and everything else we just discussed will affect the quality of your sleep. So time in bed is the most important, and then the sunlight exposure, the food, the water, the temperature, the light exposure before bed, the blue light on your phone, that's going to impede the quality of your sleep. And there's no one's ever come out and said we need to sleep 12 hours a day. It's more, you need that 7 to 8 number, but the quality needs to be important. And you experience it when you have a really bad night's sleep. You're up and down, up and down, up and down. And you wake up and you felt like you've been hit by a truck. And other times you wake up and you're fresh as a daisy. And more often than not, that is just the amount of time you spent going through that deep and rapid eye movement, that REM cycle.
Yeah, and I think a lot, like I completely agree with you there, but I think an improvement for a lot of people would just be increasing how much time you do spend in bed. If everyone went to bed half an hour earlier and got up at the same time, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that most people are going to be getting more sleep.
Yeah.
Just based off being in bed for half an hour longer. So all those other things are really handy. Avoiding screen time, food, light, all that thing, all that jazz. It's all very important. But I think to keep it absolutely simple, if you're to take one thing away from today, if you're able to get into bed half an hour earlier every night, you're going to get more sleep.
Yeah, and absolutely, and whether you are trying to lose body fat, gain muscle, get stronger, get fitter, sleep is your friend. And if you get a good amount of sleep, if you spend the right amount of time in bed, your results will progress faster. It is as simple as that.
Well, yeah, let's even just forget about progress and results for a moment and think about how much better you would feel.
Yeah.
Just being well rested, and that's been known to reduce stress. The more you're able to sleep, the lower your resting heart rate will be, the more sleep you get, which makes your body perform more efficiently and feel better. So I completely agree. Everything's going to improve, but you're going to just feel a whole lot more refreshed and have a lot more energy, which is going to allow you to do more through the day, work better, spend more time with your kids and family, have better relationships, and in all, your life is going to be a lot better the more energy you have.
And you touched on it then. Let's remove ourselves from the gym environment. Just your cognitive memory is increased. You can remember things better.
Yeah,
then you become a better communicator, right? Everything is improved with sleep. And it is, once again, people are looking towards taking the teaspoon of sugar out of their coffee or doing that taking that extra supplement, when if you went to bed half hour early, it is better than anything you're doing right now.
Yep, I agree. So if you're to take away one thing from today, half an hour more time in bed every night is going to make a big difference. A few of those other things we mentioned, if you feel as though you can improve and action some of those things, I encourage you to do so, whether it be limit your screen time before bed, avoid big meals before bed, avoid, having too much water, within 90 minutes of bedtime, make your room dark. If you can control the temperature, do that. Sleep in an eye mask. I know I do. Yeah. I look silly, but it helps.
We always talk about consistency and the low-hanging fruit. Just go to bed. Go to bed. And then if you are doing that, if you are nailing that component, then you can start looking at the other stuff. And just like anything, don't try and change everything at once. Go to bed early. Do that for a month. And then you might look at trying to be off your phone an hour before bed. And then you might get the aircon and just build from there. But the biggest thing is just go to bed on time. I notice it drastically if I'm in bed late. I'm a different human being. And I think the same way someone feels when they lose 20 kilos, they feel amazing. They can't believe how good they feel. I think we're not surprised. I think you, the listener, would be surprised at just how much sleep would improve your ability to function as a human being. And you'd be amazed at how much better you'd feel.
Yeah, just energy alone, because without energy, it makes the rest of your life a whole lot harder. So that alone, it's worth it.
Absolutely. So I think we might dive into this a bit more deeper later on in terms of those smaller things that you can improve. This was just a quick podcast before the weekend to get it out to you, just to encourage you to just sleep more when possible and just do your best.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Have a good day. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you again soon.